Well, why don't we jump into it and get started? We have about 6 items this morning to go over with you. The first item, item 1, regarding DNA testing. Various items have been sent to Cellmark Diagnostics in Maryland for DNA testing. The items were delivered on Tuesday of this week. The testing by Cellmark could take up to 6 weeks for results. In addition, we have a statement from Cellmark which will be distributed at the end of this briefing. Item 2, handwriting samples. Boulder police are in receipt of a third set of handwriting samples from Miss Patricia Ramsey. These items were collected by Boulder police on Friday, February 28th. Police had difficulty obtaining satisfactory samples because Miss Ramsey is reported to have been taking medication since December 26. Item 3, based on the information Boulder police have to date, Boulder police are now able to eliminate John Andrew and Melinda Ramsey as potential suspects. Boulder detectives traveled to Roswell, Georgia back in February for the express purpose of collecting conclusive evidence that would allow us to eliminate John Andrew and Melinda from suspicion in this case. Upon arrival, we were informed that John B. Ramsey had retained attorney James Jenkins in Atlanta to represent Lucinda Johnson, Melinda, and John Andrew. Mr. Jenkins declined to allow his clients to speak with us. As a result, alternative sources of information had to be developed, which delayed our ability to publicly issue this information. John Andrew and Melinda are being publicly cleared of the involvement in this case to relieve them of stress caused by inappropriate speculation. If indeed people are looking into the background of employees of the Boulder Police Department, that would be entirely irrelevant to this investigation. As Police Chief Kobe has said many times, Boulder Police will not be distracted by outside issues.
Yes, sir. Is it yes or no? Are they or aren't they?
I don't know specifically if they are, but if this is occurring, it's entirely irrelevant to this investigation. Yes, ma'am.
Looking at the conclusions of JonBenét's autopsy and knowing that child abuse just never happened in a vacuum, can you categorically say that there has never been a past report of child abuse from the Ramsey home?
Okay, your question puts me in an awkward position because some of the things that you said in your question are not accurate. So do you want to rephrase it?
Has Boulder Department of, I'm sorry, I don't know what you call it here, Social Services. Has Boulder's Department of Social Services ever received a past report of child abuse at the Ramsey home?
Okay, I know you're from out of state, so maybe I should explain a little bit. The city is a separate jurisdiction from the county of Boulder. The Child Protection Division of Boulder County is not part of the city of Boulder, so it would be inappropriate for me to speak for that agency.
Past child abuse at the Ramsey home.
Okay, I don't understand the question specifically, so let's try it again.
Okay, since the Ramseys moved here from out of state, has any official law enforcement agency, any child protective service agency in this state gotten a report of suspected child abuse at their home?
Okay, I'm not going to respond to that question. Next question, please.
Can you categorically deny it?
Ask and answer. Next question, please.
Charles.
What's the status, Kelvin, of the interview with the Ramseys?
A formal police interview with the parents of the victim has not been scheduled. I want to note that the lack of a formal interview with the parents of the victim has not slowed the investigation, which is active and ongoing. Yes, sir.
What can you say about their demand that they be interviewed jointly?
What I can tell you is that as we have articulated since the beginning of this case, we have a way that we conduct formal police interviews. Those items in the way we conduct formal interviews include that the parties be interviewed separately, that the interviews be conducted by Boulder police detectives at a time and a location conducive to a productive interview, that the interviews be video and or audio taped, and that the persons being interviewed may be represented by legal counsel, and police officers advise them of their legal rights, including their right not to talk to police and their right to exercise that right at any time. And finally, the fifth item that we add in any police formal interview, Charles, is that only the individual being interviewed, their legal counsel, and police be present in the room during the interview. Yes, ma'am.
Is District Attorney Alex Hunter any closer to hiring the private investigator?
There have been ongoing discussions with a number of possible candidates. And retired Deputy Chief Tom Haney, most recently of the Denver Police Department, is one of those candidates. To answer your question probably more specifically. Did you have a follow?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
You said that you guys released John, Andrew, and Melinda, or you released them off of the suspect list because of stress. Is anyone else do that courtesy?
That is the only announcement we have of that type today.
So no one else is released off the suspect list?
Why, for 10 weeks, you guys have said that nobody will be publicly excluded as suspects, and today you have said that John, Andrew, and Melinda will not be considered suspects. Why the change? Why suddenly have you decided we're going to name people specifically?
What we have said previously is that we are not going to get into a position where we are going to identify anyone as a possible suspect. What we have said, Phil, is that regarding suspects, is that we are going to identify a suspect when an arrest warrant is issued. We are not going to attempt to identify a suspect prior to that, Phil. We have been able to, at this point, eliminate, in this very specific situation, John, Andrew, and Melinda from suspicion in this case. Did you have a follow, Bill?
Well, I guess the question would be, you guys have, when we brought other names to the table in the past, the answer has been, we're not publicly discussing whether or not people are suspects. Today you have said, we've said we're not going to say these people are suspects. Why can't you do that with other people in the case?
Well, as you recall, on December 30th, we put out a statement that said that the adult siblings were out of town at the time of the incident. This is in follow-up to that statement that we issued on December 30th. We have not issued any other statements such as that. So it's incredibly consistent in our view that to follow up on a previous public statement.
You began with that. In clearing them, John, Andrew, and Melinda, you say they're out of town. Can you give us specifics to where they were and why they are cleared?
No, I cannot. Carol?
As far as Patsy Ramsey and the handwriting samples, you said she was incoherent the 26th. Which day?
I will read you item 2 again. Boulder police are in receipt of a third set of handwriting samples from Miss Patricia Ramsey. These items were collected by Boulder police on Friday, February 28th. Police had difficulty obtaining satisfactory samples because Miss Ramsey is reported to have been taking medication since December 26th.
So the reason you asked for a third was because what she wrote down might not have been what her normal handwriting is, because maybe she was under medication.
Well, I understand what you're saying. What I can tell you is that we, prior to this third set, have been unable to obtain a sample that's been satisfactory.
Thanks.
I'm going to try again. Since the death of JonBenét Ramsey, can you tell us whether or not the Department of Social Services here has visited the Ramsey home to determine the condition of the other minor child that's still there?
Concerning Burke Ramsey, there's no indication that he is in imminent danger. Did you have a follow?
Yes. Did they visit the Ramsey home?
My understanding is that the Boulder County Department of Social Services Child Protection Division has been consulted and were consulted early on in the investigation.
Homicide Detective Lou Smith had once stated that Boulder, Colorado was, and I quote, the most evil town I've ever encountered, end quote. And this was further highlighted by the fact that both Detective Steve Thomas and Linda Arndt were allegedly gifted with what some may consider a warning and others may consider a threat, in the form of cats that were harmed with their inside fluids and entrails spread about their front porches and doors. It's unclear if any other detectives had received this eyes wide shut type message, but Bob Whitson, another early detective on the case, had his home targeted by a drive-by.
Inquirer has been talking about the latest clues and developments in this case. And Pam, I asked you how your sister felt about the coverage. You have some strong feelings about Mike Walker, do you not?
Well, certainly not personally. I've never met the gentleman, but I would like to make a blanket statement about really all of the coverage that has happened. And that would be that I find it hard to believe that reputable journalists who are professionally trained and schooled in this country fail to find critical and substantive facts in this case and report on that. Instead, what I know to be true is so oftentimes a piece or a corner of the table is pulled off and then an entire story woven around that, and the facts are just not prove?
Well, the 911 call being digitally enhanced has been verified.
Well, that I cannot speak to. I was not there, but neither was the gentleman from the National Enquirer.
Oh, well, don't bet on it. But let me just tell you something. It's not just what we discover and what we say. You have to remember, you just had a detective who made over 250 investigative reports, Steve Thomas, resign from this case in absolute disgust. Here's a man who put his career on the line, took up his badge, slammed it down, and said, "That's it. I am sick of this district attorney. He is a witness for the defense." Okay?
Well, let me... yes, ma'am.
I believe that we should all be thankful for issues of the Inquirer, because certainly the police department or the family is not very interested in bringing this to justice. This is a little girl who has long since been gone.
Look, let me make something clear. Look, I am a journalist, all right? I mean, the outcome, I would be just as happy to do a story saying, wow, Ramsey's completely innocent. I would love to do that story, okay? I would love to. What we feel, all of us, I think, are feeling about what you're saying is that you seem to resent the fact that people are asking questions about why a little girl is murdered, and the parents will not just fully and freely come forward and answer any question.
So were any of the detectives reassigned, as was reported to news media? Or is it that anyone actually trying to investigate was heavily suggested not to proceed with their leads and findings? And this was why so many of the detectives and investigators not only ceased their employment from their specific departments, but had left law enforcement as a career altogether?
Alex Hunter, the district attorney who calls Thomas a tormented soul, urged caution with regard to Thomas's conclusions.
He didn't have the background and the sort of the depth of understanding that several of the other detectives did. I don't think detectives ought to be writing books.
All right, let me start with this. This is an ongoing investigation. It is still very much an open case. Was it appropriate for you to write this book now, and why?
Well, that's quite a fallacy that the district attorney is trying to continue to put upon the American public, that this is an ongoing active case. As a matter of fact, I would refer him just Friday. One of his top advisors in this case has acknowledged what many have known for a long time, that this is a cold case, that absent a confession on the part of a remorseful killer, this case is going absolutely nowhere.
Well, what about the charges that this is unethical for you to write this book right now?
Well, I would say that my tolerance finally ran out for the doublespeak and the hypocrisy inside government, and particularly inside the district attorney's office and the district attorney himself, who was not only shoveling case file information to the primary suspects in this case, but to the media as well. And this was government at its absolute worst. And finally, my tolerance was exhausted. And I urge you, read this book, and then you tell me that this was not a story that should have been told.
Specifically, what did Boulder police do wrong in the initial hours of this investigation?
Well, even the Boulder Police Department now concedes that on the 26th of December, in what everybody now can see is a patently bogus ransom note, it was treated as a kidnapping, and a crime scene was not secured. Witnesses and potential suspects were not separated and interviewed, and there were just a number of things that are Police Academy 101. And then beyond that, mistakes continued to be made, and then the DA's office got involved in the fray, and it went downhill from there. And if one steps back and takes a macro perspective of this case, I think this is not just me talking. The detectives involved in this case, ultimately the grand jury, prosecutors, other law enforcement, were all in consensus that the right person and the right people were being targeted in this case, and in particular Patsy Ramsey. But as to your question, what evidence? There's a lot of evidence, but the strongest being the pen, the pad, the ransom note, and the handwriting.
We've highlighted the A's. What is so significant about these A's, these lowercase A's?
Well, taken by themselves, certainly an argument could be made either way. But what we found significant was that pre-homicide, Patsy Ramsey was inclined to make what we call these lowercase manuscript A's throughout her writing. And we noted that in the ransom note, this lowercase manuscript A was prevalent throughout, But post-homicide, after the Ramseys were wrongly given a copy of this ransom note, her use of that lowercase manuscript A dropped off the map, and she discontinued writing like that.
Well, even if Patsy Ramsey did write the note, is that enough to prove that she killed her daughter?
Well, I make the argument what happened in Boulder, Colorado was a sense that where did logic and common sense seem to go? I don't think it's that great a leap, absent some big conspiracy, that the writer of the note is involved in the killing of the child.
We are continuing our conversation with Steve Thomas, a former lead detective on the JonBenét Ramsey murder investigation. Mr. Thomas has written a new book about this case. And if you would, Steve, please walk us through what you think happened on that night in December of 1996.
Well, in this case, the question I get all the time is from people, what do I think happened? And I offer a hypothesis in the book, 2 pages out of a 360-some-odd page book, as to one of the possible scenarios that that I thought may have occurred. Certainly the detectives discussed a number of scenarios, but I think mine was consistent with the evidence as I knew it, and took a relatively simple explanation to explain Patsy Ramsey's involvement. And it's quite simple, really. I think there was some sort of explosive encounter late that night between mother and daughter, which resulted in the child being killed. And thus, by definition, an accidental death lacks motive. And then I think where the motive came in was in a cover-up that followed.
Now, you also talk about bedwetting perhaps being a problem that may have led Patsy Ramsey to eventually kill her daughter. Tell me about that.
Well, again, let's put it in context. I saw the Ramseys a moment ago, Patsy remarking how infrequent and what a small thing it was. But at least one of the witnesses that we spoke with said not only was it a problem, but it was a problem that had become habitual and nightly in the weeks and months prior to her death. And this isn't just me talking. Again, in this case, we consulted with highly esteemed pediatric experts who told me that one of the number one reasons that they saw in cases where parents killed children was a parental rage whose genesis was in bedwetting or toileting accident.
What's your take on John Ramsey? Do you think he really knows what happened?
Well, and again, I'm speculating here, but only he knows. And of course, he's vehemently denied any knowledge or participation. But again, I think the Ramseys know more than they have told authorities about what went on in the house that night.
Ramsey attorney Lynn Wood has said that your theory is, quote, fiction, and that he plans on taking legal action against you. Are you prepared for that?
Well, what I find remarkable is what I think is the hypocrisy. They took advantage of every constitutional right this country affords them throughout the legal process. And then their First Amendment right a month ago, they exercised and penned a book and named 3 people as the possible killer of their daughter. 3 people whom I believe are clearly innocent people, yet when I try to exercise that same First Amendment right, they point the cannons at me, and I have to challenge that.
If everything you say is true, why hasn't there been an indictment?
Probable cause was never the issue in this case. As a matter of fact, for 13 years as a police officer and a detective, I had never been involved in a case that I can remember in which we did not arrest on probable cause. But due to this case being legally manipulated to death, and all the politics and egos and behind the scenes that was going on, not only was an arrest not made, but the grand jury, who presumably saw that same probable cause that the police had early, through whatever process, it was determined that there was not enough there was not enough to take it to a criminal trial where beyond a reasonable doubt is the threshold.
Final question. On a personal note, do you miss being a detective, and would you ever do it again?
I miss the hell out of police work. Cops are the greatest people on earth. I love cops. But Boulder, Colorado has a seriously flawed criminal justice system. I don't miss being a cop in Colorado. I miss being a cop, but I work as a carpenter now, and that's good, honest work for me now.
Actually, I lied. I've got one more quick question. Do you think there will ever be an indictment in this case?
No, absolutely not. And again, the district attorney is misleading people if he suggests otherwise. Absent a confession in this case, absent a remorseful killer confessing, nobody's going to be charged in this case, and Alex Hunter knows that.
This next-level secrecy was not just some isolated circumstances in Boulder either. The Denver, Colorado airport was opened in February of 1995, showcasing disturbing murals and secret society symbolism that may not be noticed by the untrained eye, including a Freemason time capsule installation on March 19, 1994, that's meant to remain sealed until 2094. Who knows what kind of secrets are embedded beneath this capstone? There's also an enormous blue horse sculpture called Blucifer.
We have breaking news this morning. Blucifer, the iconic blue Mustang at Denver International Airport, has been vandalized. DIA staff confirms orange paint was tagged on the side of the statue's legs. It is faint and hard to make out, and it was discovered last night around 8 o'clock. Crews are now trying to figure out how to remove the paint without damaging the statue. Denver police are investigating.
And a talking gargoyle that was added later for additional dramatic effect.
Just like Kirk, a little older, a little wiser, a little weirder. Well, as you know, Denver International has some strong conspiracy theories. So to make the airport experience a little more fun and keep with the theme for those traveling through DIA, the airport embraced the weirdness. A talking gargoyle dropped by to give travelers his 2 cents and got plenty of laughs.
That's a little too close for comfort, lady.
Oh, damn.
What, you never seen a talking gargoyle before? Welcome to Illuminati headquarters. I mean, Denver International Airport.
This is awesome.
Hello? Do I know you?
Are you hungry?
Oh, I'm starving. You got anything for me? Those flowers look delicious.
Oh, my God. Oh, it's because of the conspiracy.
Oh, it's because of the conspiracy. Look at me. I'm a little know-it-all. Will you get back over here? I got a question about this conspiracy. You know, you can actually put the phone down and have a conversation with me. But no, I'm a millennial. I've got to post it. I've got to snap face it and Twitter book it.
You're such a sweet talker.
Will you take me back home with you?
Let's go. I have some space in my backpack.
Actually, I think you have too much baggage for me.
These elements have been the source of many different conspiracy theories, but have all been dismissed as if they're completely unfounded. Some may be, but the Freemason time capsule is certainly worth noting.
We just would truly love to, share the real, true meaning of this mural and just about our hope for peace and love despite the hatred that we all witness in the world, to somehow come together for the sake of our children.
My name is Leo Tanguma, and I'm a mural painter. When I was in the 5th grade in elementary school, I did some drawings on the blackboard about my classmates killing our town sheriff. So I got severely punished for that. But the reason I did that is because the sheriff in our hometown was a killer. He had killed, up to that point, 7 Mexican Americans, including 2 of my mom's cousins. And so later on, that was an attitude that I had, that I needed to see what's wrong in society and try and reflect it in my murals.
It wasn't until 2008 that a cousin told me they hate that mural. People hate that mural. They say you want 9/11 because of that figure of war. They say that in the Bible all these dirty animals are unclean. They say, why are you painting people in coffins? And, just on and on and on, where it became a terrible conspiracy that's actually worldwide now.
There's been conspiracy theories by many groups about the murals at DIA, and that these have been like wild accusations, idiotic accusations of people with terrible meanings and feelings towards the idea the ideas that represented. For example, one minister, religious minister, called the mural satanic, and other such accusations that are terrible. So, but again, I think that they made me feel more assured about the ideas that I was trying to represent.
Yeah, I think rumors like that about the airport conspiracies and the mural conspiracies, they really seek to destroy the human connection, the human spirit. I want to create artwork that will bring us together so that we could see each other's human spirit and have that connection again.
It was reported by a man named Phil Schneider, who was a contractor at the time, that there was an elaborate tunnel system built beneath this airport, at least 8 levels deep, with a 4.5 square mile city and an 88.5 square mile base. He passed under suspicious circumstances after making this report.
Rather horrendous designs and mechanizations of our federal government structure that I feel directly imperiled not to tell anybody about, so that's why I'm here telling it. In doing so, I'm breaking my security oaths. I am also guilty of breaking major federal law. How long I'll be able to do this, anybody's guess. However, I would like to mention this talk is going to be broken up into 4 main topics. And each of these topics will have some bearing on what you people are involved in, you patriot people, or even some of you people that aren't patriots that may be leaning in that way or considering it. I want you to know these United States are a beautiful place. I've traveled in over 70 countries, and I cannot remember any country that has the beauty as well as the magnificence of its people like these United States. Give you an overview of basically what I am. I started off, went through engineering school, which half of my schooling was in the field. I built up a reputation for being a geological engineer as well as a structural engineer with both military and aerospace applications. I have helped build 2 main concern bases within these United States that have some significance as far as what is it called the New World Order. Number 1 is Dulce, New Mexico. I was involved in 1979 in a horrendous firefight with alien human type, whatever you want to call them. And I was one of the survivors. I'm probably the only talking survivor you'll ever hear. 2 other survivors are under close guard somewhere in these United States. One is not in very good shape. He's living in Canada. So I'm about the only one around that knows the firefight, that knows all the detailed files of the entire operation. 66 Secret Service agents, FBI and the like, Black Berets died in that firefight. I was there. Number 1, part of what I'm going to tell you is going to be very shocking. Part of what I'm going to tell you is probably going to be very unbelievable. So if instead of putting on your glasses, I'll ask you to put your skepticals on rather than your spectacles. But please feel free to do your own homework. I know the Freedom of Information Act isn't much to go on, but unfortunately it's basically the best we've got. Your local law library and your nearest law university is a good place to look for congressional records. So if one continues to do their homework, and one can be standing vigilant in regards to their country. I love the country that I'm living in more than I love my life. I would not be standing before you right now risking my life by telling you these things if I didn't believe it so. The first part of this talk is going to concern deep underground military bases and the black budget. Let me first start by emphasizing the black budget. The black budget is a secretive group, basically a secret budget it garners 1/4 of the gross national product, the entire gross national product of these United States. Present, the gross national product is around $5 trillion. So 1/4 of that's about $1.25 trillion per year. At least 1.023 trillion, and I say at least, is used in black budget programs like deep underground military bases. Presently, there are 129 deep underground military bases in these United States. Is this our? No, this one doesn't work. Oh, this one too tall. Anyway, of these 129 bases, they've been building them day and night unceasingly since the early 40s. Some of them were built even earlier than that. These bases comprise basically of large cities underground. They're connected by high-speed monorail magneto-leviton trains that can go up to Mach 2. Books have been written, several books recently have been written about this activity, all of which is verifiable through bibliography. I think Al Bielek will, unfortunately, Al Bielek has my only copy is Al Bielek here, by the way? Al Bielek? Yes, please do. Richard Sauder's book, he's a PhD architect, and he alone also is risking his life by talking about this. He worked with a number of government agencies on deep underground military bases. Okay, there are 129 of these in these United States. In and around where you live, in Idaho, there are 11 of them. It's a very large number. The average depth of each base is roughly a mile deep. They are basic whole cities hauled out underground. There are somewhere between 2 2/3 cubic miles and 4 1/4 cubic miles hauled out underground. You might ask how this is done. Well, right now they have laser drilling machines that can drill a tunnel 7 miles in one day. Obviously, we the public guys, I've been with them done, but I thought about it. Well, unfortunately, I don't believe it.
In November of 1997, a man performing maintenance on an aircraft had supposedly saw roughly 120 children being loaded onto a plane going to Paris. When questioned, the woman accompanying them claimed to be working with social services. Although this situation cannot be confirmed, it isn't outside the realm of possibility. The Ramseys' own private investigator had confirmed there were at least 4 active child exploitation rings in Boulder at the time, and Paul Bonacci had showed investigators a safe house in Buena Vista, Colorado, where he and other children were held. There were clear signs of children having been kept underneath the home in a makeshift tunnel.
In 1992, Bonacci is released from prison and tells his story on the TV show America's Most Wanted. As part of the show, Bonacci leads a film crew to an abandoned ranch in Colorado, where he claims Johnny Gosch and countless other boys were once held captive.
This is where they kept some of the kids hidden away underneath the house here. I almost couldn't do it to even go near the house because I got up there and the memories flooded back of the last time I was here and leaving here.
If you remember, we talked about Paul Bonacci in part 1 and his connection to the Franklin conspiracy. It is who mentioned Michael Aquino, whose name keeps coming up in dark places in relation to crimes against children, including the Presidio Army-based daycare. We also briefly touched on the McMartin Preschool case. The McMartin Preschool children had spoken about a tunnel system and secret rooms beneath the facility, which is where they were brought to be harmed and or transported. It was reported to media and in court that no such tunnels or secret rooms existed. However, according to Dr. Gary Stickle, who led the archaeological investigation, they did exist, So it's hard to fully trust and believe the official narrative in these kinds of situations. That investigation unearthed not one, but 2 tunnel complexes, as well as previously unrecognized structural features which defied logical explanation. Both tunnel complexes conformed to locations and functional descriptions established by children's reports. One had been described as providing undetected access to an adjacent building on the east. The other provided outside access under the west wall of the building, and contained within it an enlarged cavernous artifact corresponding to the children's descriptions of a quote-unquote secret room. I'll scroll through this 13-page report so you can pause and read all the details for yourself, but it just goes to show that once again, it's likely certain details about such cases were sealed for reasons of national security, and therefore cannot be presented in court before a jury, which of course discredited the children's statements, and no real justice could ever be served.
It may be that there will be one or more findings of guilt. It may be, in other words, that the legal process produces the conclusion that some little children actually were sexually abused. But it is doubtful that anyone will conclude that the way this trial was handled and covered by the media reflects much credit on either U.S. journalism or the U.S. legal system. Innocent people have had their reputations smeared and their lives turned upside down. Very young children who may or may not have been abused have certainly been traumatized by endless hours of relentless examination and cross-examination in pretrial and courtroom hearings. Whatever else will be said about the McMartin case, it will never be cited as a proud example of our criminal justice system. Here's the background from Nightline correspondent James Walker.
This is the McMartin Preschool where the sexual abuse allegedly took place. These pictures were taken in January 1984. Just days before the school was closed. It is located in an upper middle-class suburb of Los Angeles called Manhattan Beach. What made this case so sensational, so gruesome, was the accusation that 41 youngsters over a 6-year period had not just been sexually molested, but had also been forced to participate in satanic rites and graphic pictures. There were also charges that to keep the children quiet, animals had been mutilated before their eyes. To add to the sensationalism, the 7 people arrested were not only pillars of the community, they were also responsible for the children's welfare. 3 generations of McMartins were arrested. Grandmother Virginia, daughter Peggy McMartin Bucky, her son Raymond Bucky, his sister Peggy Ann Bucky, as well as 3 teachers. At their arraignment in April 1984, the prosecutor said the defendants were so dangerous they should be jailed without bail. 5 of them were. The parents of the children were incensed.
I want them out of society forever. They should never, ever be allowed to be with other children or anybody else.
Although the Franklin conspiracy originated in Nebraska, and the Presidio and McMartin cases were in California, the same pattern of leniency and lack of justice could be seen in Colorado throughout the 80s and 90s as well. So there certainly was something fishy going on in Boulder, and Colorado as a whole at the time. We'll be looking closer at this historical pattern of Boulder dropping the ball on crimes against children, the lead suspects in the JonBenét case, other possible associates, and the days leading up to the holiday tragedy. I'll also be going deeper into the Ramseys' questionable past, the unexpected loss of John's oldest daughter Beth, and the other darker angles of this case. In the meantime, you can join the Eyes Wide Open Telegram group, where I post news and updates relating to the great big elephant in the room. I also post bonus and other uncensored content on Patreon. Everything's free to all members, but paid members will have early access to some posts.